Well, on behalf of the Historical Society of Santa Rosa, I would like to welcome you and thank you all for coming. I think this is going to be a wonderful and illuminating conversation. My name is Chris Smith, and I aspire to someday become an actor. So check back. I know that the Historical Society would like to acknowledge and thank very heartily the sponsors, Friedman's. We've got some Friedman's present. And Lagunitas Beer. Two of the best companies in Sonoma County. You can't imagine one without the other. There will be a question and answer period at the end of the conversation, and we just ask that you try to keep it more or less parallel to what they were discussing. I'm sure that they will provide, our speakers will provide a lot of deep conversation questions. They like to keep kind of on the same track. It occurs to me that if I was born to do anything, it would be to introduce two men who require no introduction. So I'm going to keep it short. Pete Golis began his career at the Press Democrat as a general assignment reporter. When that happened, most of the people in the audience weren't yet alive. Your parents may have told you about some of Pete's early writings. He would go on to become a political editor and columnist, then moved to Sacramento, and you may recall when Pete was reporting from Sacramento as a Capitol correspondent. He returned to Santa Rosa to become a columnist and editorial director. Pete has won awards from the San Francisco Press Club, California Newspaper Publishers Association, Best of the West competition, and the Peninsula Press Club. Pete Golis retired officially from the Press Democrat in 2008, but as you know, continues to write a column for the Pete Golis. And tonight, Pete's job is to interview and direct the conversation with Congressman Mike Thompson. First elected to Congress in 1998, Mike was born in St. Helena, so he's been there a while. He's the son. He was born to Beverly Ann and Charles Edward Thompson. He was educated at California State University, Chico. And he served in Vietnam with the United States Army's 173rd Airborne Brigade. He was a staff sergeant and platoon leader in Vietnam, where he was wounded and received the Purple Heart. He was also an instructor at the Army's Airborne School. In 1990, Mike Thompson became the first Vietnam veteran elected to the California State Senate. In civilian life, he was a vineyard owner and maintenance supervisor for Behringer Winery. He taught, prior to public service, he taught public administration and state government at San Francisco State University and California State University, Chico, and then he entered the California State Senate. As you know, he represents California's 5th Congressional District. It includes all of Napa, parts of Contra Costa, Lake, Solano, and Sonoma counties. Mike is married to Janet Thompson. They have 2 sons, a firefighter and a deputy sheriff, and 3 wonderful granddaughters. Congressman Mike Thompson. And that completes my work.
Thank you. Did everybody hear me okay? No, it's great to be here. Mike, thank you. People are excited that you're, I'm excited to be here. I was struck part of your story is about Vietnam. And on July 8th, we celebrate something like we mark the 50th anniversary of the start of the Vietnam War. And you made a statement that said, in effect, we always must honor and respect the people who serve us, even if we disagree about the decisions we make. And you seem pretty good about that now, but 50 years ago, we weren't so good about it. I have a friend who served in Vietnam and came home and was out on the street and his number got spat out. I sometimes wonder about the way, future generations will understand the context of that war. I guess what I wanted to ask you was, what kind of experiences did you have when you came home to Vietnam? And how did that influence who you were?
Well, I'll start by telling you a kind of interesting story. When I came home, I was wounded, and I came home on a medevac, and I came back to Travis Air Force Base. That was the first spot where we landed. And from there, I was on a litter on a bus, a small school bus, and they drove a bunch of us to Veterans General Hospital in San Francisco, down off of 19th Avenue, if y'all remember where that was. And I was on the top row, the top litter, and I could see about this much out the window. The three of us sat there. And we got to the front of the hospital, there was a protest taking place. And we stopped for the light or whatever it was. And they were yelling and rocking the bus. And so the bus was rocking, and I couldn't walk, I couldn't stand. And I was looking out the window, and these guys were yelling and pushing and rocking. I thought, oh my God, I made it all the way back, only to be a casualty of a bus roll over. So, I understand what a lot of my colleagues went through when they came back. People were treated poorly, and as you say, that's changed a lot. I think my statement rings true to a lot of people. No matter what you think of the war, one of the warriors. Folks went to service, they put on the uniform of this country, they did what their country asked them to do, and we all need to remember that. As far as how it's impacted me, I think that my entire military background, my experience, has influenced me a lot in my decision-making process. You can look at my reaction to the Iraq War. I voted against going to war in Iraq. I thought it was a poor move, and I think the facts prove me right. I think we should have done that. I experienced, used my experience in dealing with the issues that have come about as a result of the man war, to Iraq war. The fact that we have all of these service members who come back with disabilities or injuries, not to mention the loss of life and the $1 trillion that we've spent. But we're going to be paying for those veterans, those service members, for the rest of our lives and our children's lives. It's very, very cost effective. And I don't think we should be politically expedient when we deal with issues of the war. I think we need to be much more thoughtful and much less political.
The way we take care of veterans has been very important.
I'm the co-chair, I'm the co-founder with Michael Billirakis, who's a Republican from Florida, of the Veterans Caucus. Michael retired from Congress, and his son Gus took his seat, and Gus is the new chairman. So the two of us chair the Veterans Caucus.
Well, we made progress. Where do we need to do better?
That we will be working on making it better for the rest of our lives. There's no silver bullet. It's a tough issue. There are way too many folks who need services that the VA provides, and there's far too few dollars to do it. There aren't enough doctors, there aren't enough nurses, so we're getting some nurses everywhere. So we have the same problem in, outside of the VA. But we need to stay forever vigilant. We need to keep looking at it. We need to make sure that our oversight is keen, and if there's a problem, we need to ferret it out. I know that the first response, and I think we passed legislation, I know we passed legislation where it was supposed to provide the off-campus care for veterans to get a little card, and veterans didn't get their care quick enough, they could go off campus and get it done someplace. And I remember I was meeting with Rod Neighbors, who was the staffer for the president. Remember, as soon as it happened, the president dispatched Rod Neighbors to VA, said, "You need to find out what's going on." And Neighbors was the head staff guy for David Obey in the Appropriations Committee for a long time. So he was the right guy to do it. And I met with Rob and with Secretary McDonald about this, and I said, just don't get too carried away thinking that this card is the answer to this thing. Because I had one of those when I came back. I carry a disability. And I had one of those cards, and they said, if you need to get care and you're too far away from a veterans facility, you take this to any doctor, any place, and you can just give them that card and they'll give you the service. And I remember going to a ear, nose, and throat specialist in Chico when I was in college, and explaining that I have tinnitus, constant ringing in my ear, and hearing loss from my injury in Vietnam. And they go, you go to the doctor's office, they give you the clipboard, fill out all the papers, and so I filled out the ream of required papers and gave them back, and she looked through them, and she said, "Now, how will you be paying for this?" "I've got this card. All I have to do is give you this card, and you take care of me, and you bill the VA, and then bill you. And she said, "Thanks. But the truth of the matter is, we've got too much work. We don't need to hassle with any other bureaucracy. This is VA." So that's not the answer. And I don't think there's any one silver bullet. I just think we have to stay on it. We have to, we're going to run into problems as we go. And we need to make sure that we figure it out and find a solution to that problem. We need to be willing to spend money, because the idea that we can do all this without spending money is far-fetched.
I've never understood why we have politicians who wave the flag, talk about their patriotism as a clean veteran, but then they won't support the measures to provide the money necessary to help these people.
I agree.
What is that about?
I can only speak for myself. You're right, and I think there's a lot of examples. It's not just on waving the flag and abandoning our veterans, but there are examples of that every day. Folks who take positions and then turn around and vote differently. And you see it especially when it comes to paying for
You go to Vietnam a lot on trade of different languages.
I think I've been 4 times since I came back.
When you think about that, is that a way to bring your life home? You think about where you've been and where you want to go?
Well, I think you and I had this discussion once before. When the first time I went back to Vietnam was 1999, when President Clinton, in his last year in office, I got a call and I was asked to go with him on that trip. And I was a freshman member of Congress and still trying to figure out where the proverbial bathrooms are and all those things. And I said, absolutely, I'm going on this trip. I was smart enough to know that you didn't think about that, and I signed up to go. And I was in my house in Washington, D.C. the night before I was leaving, and I got a call from your newspaper, and they had found out that I was going, and they asked some questions for me, and the woman who was interviewing me, her last question was something about have you thought about going back, and what are your thoughts about going back? And the truth is, I hadn't thought about it. All I knew I was going, and I was just overwhelmed with being a freshman member of Congress. And that was probably the first time it hit me. Hey, you're going back to Vietnam. And so I went on that trip, and it was an incredible trip, as you all can imagine. And if you think about it, at that point, in 1999, only 15% of the people alive were alive during what we call the Vietnam War, what they call the American War. And we were greeted with open arms. The streets were lined with people in motorcade would drive by. And we met with all of the different officials. The most striking thing that I remember was standing in front of the presidential house in North Vietnam. And if you've read about or been there maybe, you know that the Ho Chi Minh house was right behind that palace. You know, somebody younger and stronger than me could probably have thrown a baseball from that spot where we were standing to his house. And that's where he planned and carried out, executed the war. And so here I am. There were a number of other Vietnam veterans with us. John Kerry was one of them. And we were standing in front of the presidential palace with the president of Vietnam there, and the Vietnamese military band played the Star Spangled Banner. And it was a pretty remarkable trip. And as you mentioned, I've been a couple of times subsequent to that. When I served on the intelligence committee, I was there a couple of times for intelligence work. And I was just there about a month and a half ago on some trade issues with a delegation of that time. And we were there for the vote on the trade convention authority, and that the government with a lot of folks in the labor system.
Speaking of anniversaries, July 30th was the 50th anniversary.
Yes.
I remember when it passed, and I thought, who would be old enough to make that? You were right, Chris. We are. What would happen today if Congress was asked to craft a bill that would provide health care to seniors? How would Congress do an answer like that today?
Well, you know, as you know, we were asked when we crafted a bill to deal with access to quality health care for everybody. And it's been a political issue ever since the bill was introduced and then passed. And we're still fighting those battles. I had a bill on the floor on Thursday before coming home on Friday that there's a provision in the Affordable Care Act that allows for basically house calls for chronically ill Medicare patients. And it's a great program. And as you probably know, there's a lot in the Affordable Care Act that was set up as pilot programs. And the idea was see what works, and if they work, expand them. If it doesn't work, jettison the thing. Well, this particular program is working real well. We've saved millions of dollars to taxpayers. We've allowed chronically ill Medicare patients to receive quality health care in the comfort of their home. The docs who are doing it like it, so it's just a win-win-win. And I was on the floor speaking on my bill, and my two Republican co-authors were on the other side of the chamber speaking about the bill also. And when I got up to speak, I said, I want to tell you something that they're not willing to tell you. What we're doing is we're extending for 2 more years a component of Obamacare. It's working real well. And boy, you should have seen the uncomfortable looks that I was getting across the aisle. And there were a number of speakers on both sides of the aisle, and nobody on the other side raised the issue of this being one of the components of Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act that works. So it's still a political issue. There's talk even now of trying to figure out after the last Supreme Court ruling that we will be in favor of the Affordable Care Act. There's talk now. Paul Ryan, the chairman of my committee, was in his committee, is talking about some 7-bench shot on how to do things Affordable Care Act. So it'd be real tough to do that. It's not the same working relationship that they had 50 years ago, sadly.
Well, I wanted to ask you that. How much has Congress changed since you arrived in '99? Right? How much has it changed since 1999?
It's changed a lot, and I've said this before, so it's no secret. When I got to Congress in 1999, I was amazed. I just couldn't understand, and this is after 8 years in the state senate, and I think that I was able to work well with folks on both sides of that. I was able to get a lot of things done. For most of those 8 years, I chaired the budget committee and the joint legislative budget committee. So we're able to have a balanced budget every year, and we're able to fund as best we could programs that we all care about and want to see continue. And I just thought I'd go to Congress, and I was going to walk in there and I just work with everybody and we get some things done. And I was blown away by the amount of partisanship and the unwillingness. Great story. We had a guy up in the district included Humboldt County. We had a guy who was the harbor master in Humboldt Bay, Jack Alderson. And Jack was a Vietnam veteran. He was a Navy commander, prominent Republican in the community up there, businessman. Great guy, ran the harbor and did a good job of it. And he called me and he said, I raised this with your predecessor, and he looked into it and couldn't find anything. So, but I commanded a Navy unit, and we were this test unit, and we hauled these barges out to sea on a regular basis, and they'd have caged animals in it, and then the airplanes would come over and spray. And he said they were only simulants, so I know that there's no problem with that. They were just trying to check out the wind effect on the sprays. He said, but then we bring the barges back in and we clean them up. And he said, and I think there was something in that cleaning solution because I've kept track of my men, and every one of us has some kind of peculiar cancer. And so I looked into it, and I was told the same thing my predecessor was told. First of all, they said there was no such program as Project Shad. That was the classified name of the program. And Jack said, I can't tell you anything about it, but I can tell you it's Project Shad. And I said, you're lying. This guy didn't make this stuff up. I know him. I know his character. I know his ethics. I know his morals. But you are lying to me. And long story short, we uncovered this thing, and there was a Project Shad. They weren't spraying simulants. They were spraying trace elements of some of the worst chemical and biological stuff known to mankind. And so I had it all documented at that point. I needed a public hearing. And it was Republican-controlled Congress at the time. And Jerry Moran, who's now a U.S. Senator from Kansas, was the chair of this subcommittee on the Veterans Affairs. And I went to Jerry and I laid it out and I said, I need a hearing. Because if we're going to get, all we wanted was to make sure these people who were exposed could get VA health care for the problems that they had. And I said, I need a hearing. He said, that shouldn't be a problem. The next day, he came to me and said, we got a problem. So we can't give you a hearing. Can't give you a hearing. Tom DeLay said, we can't give you a hearing because you're a freshman member of Congress. We don't know you well enough, and we haven't figured out what seats we're going to go after, and we may be able to beat you in the next election. So we got to wait it out and then find out. I said, these guys have been waiting for 30 years. We're not waiting that out any longer. I said, you need to tell DeLay that before coming here, I represented the same district for 8 years in the state senate. And if you guys want to raise $3 million and we keep Mother Teresa, she'll give me a good run, but I'm going to win. and from tomorrow on, I'm going to have a press conference with the Project Shad veterans on the steps of the Capitol until we have a hearing. And so it was nasty then. We had a hearing, by the way. We got Mother Teresa didn't run. I squeaked by. But it was bad back then. And I thought, oh, this is terrible. It could never get any worse. And one of the guys I worked closely with a lot was Don Young from Alaska. He's been there about 100,000 years. And we just work well on a lot, especially resource issues. And he and I were talking the other day, and he said, man, he said, remember when you first got here, we used to do a lot more things for us, had a lot more time. And so it has worked. There's a big stretch of red in California. That's good.
And so some of it is ideological. But there's nothing ideological about trying to help veterans who are hurt.
I agree.
Is that the leadership that drives that?
And it's both sides. I'll be perfectly bipartisan on this. I've been doing a lot of work on gun violence prevention. And there's a new Republican who became last Congress, after all the work I did on gun violence prevention, we had a bipartisan bill. We had 3 Republican co-authors. This year, there's a new Republican from Illinois who became my 4th co-author. And as soon as I signed him up, I got a call from the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee wanting to know why in the world I would do that. If this is a seat we can win back, and we're going after this guy, and why would I want to help him? So it happens on both sides, there's no question about that. And there is a lot of red between California and the East Coast. I remember when I was a candidate the first time, I was at an event in Washington, and I think there were 6 or 8 of us there, and there were a couple hundred people to hear us. And the person, the organizer said, okay, we each have 1 minute, and then sit down. And then at the end, we're going to have a reception. If anybody cares, they can come find you, which is a pretty good way to do an event, actually. But I was sitting next to a guy by the name of David Phelps, and he and I were subsequently elected together. But he was a state senator from downstate Illinois. And when he got up to speak, he made his little introduction. He said, I just want you to know I'm pro-gun, I'm pro-God, I'm pro-life, and I'm proud to be a Democrat. That was my thought, too. But I thought there was going to be, a closing line to it. No, he sat down and poked me with his elbow. He says, how do you think I did? So people are politically have different positions. And it's become exacerbated. The Tea Party stuff was exacerbated a lot. And then you had a lot of state legislatures drawing pretty partisan lines. And you look at some of these states in the South, some of the southern states, are down to 1 or 2 Democrats, and amazingly, they represent a near all African American district, and they're African American members. So they've compacted a lot of those districts. We saw that in Florida. It's happened twice, 2 months. The people of Florida passed an initiative finally to try and lighten up the lines and make them more fair. And they won. And then the Florida legislature came back and drew equally as bad lines, and they were sued. And that case just came out last week or the week before. And the judges in this particular case didn't do what they did last time. Last time they said the lines are done unfairly, go back and redo them. So the legislature went back and redid them unfairly again. This time they kept, I don't know what the legal term is, you can tell me, but the court kept control of the issue. So they said, go back and redraw them. And by the way, this district has to be drawn this way. This district has to be drawn this way. It's very, very specific. So the redistricting has hurt a lot. And with that popularity of the Tea Party, you had a situation where even the most conservative colleague of mine, if they lightened up and they voted, say for instance, on my bill to require background checks to buy a gun for commercial sale, they would get a primary from somebody who was even further to the right. And those districts are so red that they knew what they were doing.
You're a blue dog Democrat. You believe in cooperative government. In a personal sense, how do you manage this when you go to work each day? Because there's got to be frustrations associated with this. How do you deal with that?
Well, there's different frustrations. And then probably my colleagues are equally as frustrated. I don't think anybody runs for Congress not wanting to advance, their issues and get something done. So I want to get things done. I want to get things done for our district, for our state, for our country, for the world. And when you can't, it gets frustrating, and you just have to figure out a way to work around that. Good example is for about 10 or 12 years, I've been working with a group from the district of folks who want to enhance the protections for some property out around Lake Berryessa of the Stone Mountain area. That's about 333,000 acres. And they did a marvelous job. They drew the plan, they worked the plan, they got, in my part, in the grassroots stuff, which is pretty small, but they got about 150 private business owners to support it. They got city councils, county boards of supervisors, chambers of commerce. They just got a tremendous amount of grassroots support. And I couldn't get a hearing I got a hearing, but that's as far as I could go. The Natural Resources Committee isn't going to do anything to enhance public ownership of any property. There was a very, very small but pretty vocal group of opponents. And these are the people who, if you do this, I'll never be able to hunt on this land again. And they say, no, it's prescribed in the law that you can still hunt there, you can still fish there, you can do everything that you can do now. And then you have a group that the federal government shouldn't have control over this land, it's our land. And so, wait a second, all 333,000 acres is owned by the federal government. This is just a way to manage it better, protect it forever, be more efficient and save taxpayers' money in management. And but I couldn't get it out of the committee. So we found a different way to do it. We turned all of that great grassroots organizing effort to the White House. We got the state legislature to pass a resolution saying that this should be protected. And last week, before last, the president signed an executive order making it a national monument.
So when you can, the way out of this mess is to sort of go around it.
Yep. You just need to figure out a way to do it.
The Republicans and Democrats seem to have a very, very different ideas about what to do to stave off the worst impacts of the drought. But if it doesn't rain for another year, we're in a crisis now, but if we don't get rain and snow in another year, it's going to be way past that. Is there any hope that Congress can do something to help California?
Well, don't look for it in this session of Congress, because what the House majority is doing now, we had that bill last week, the drought bill. Congress is very powerful. We can prevent droughts and stuff. Just have to pass the Valadeo bill to do it. And it's laughable. We would have had more impact on the drought in California had the leadership organized a rain dance on the floor of Congress. But what their bill did was really mess with the Endangered Species Act. So for the first time, they've been trying to do this bill to export more water from the Delta and from north of the Delta down to farmers in Central California. This time, I think they overreached. They really messed with the Endangered Species Act. So they changed the definition of take, and which would allow increased take of endangered species. And so that means that not only is it deleterious to our salmon that we all care a great deal about, as well as any other endangered species, but it just tees up similar fights for other states. So other states should be rightfully concerned about this and should join the effort. But if they're successful, and they won't be, it won't get out of the Senate. But if they're successful, what they do is they scrap California water law, and a very cooperative relationship the state of California has with the federal government in trying to manage the resource that we have left. And they've been doing a good job. But, again, the problem is our biggest reservoir, the snowpack, doesn't exist and hasn't been raining. So they strap all of that established law and all that established relationship. And if they are successful in moving more water south, it puts north of Delta farmers at risk. It puts Delta farmers at risk. Kiss off our salmon population. That would really take a major hit. And then in our congressional district, we have two major cities that draw its water from the Delta. You have Martinez and Benicia. And it was a great line. Kevin McCarthy, the majority leader from Central California, he said in the debate, he said, you know, I understand building desalination plants to turn salt water into fresh water, but I don't understand letting all the rivers flow through the Delta out to sea, turning fresh water into salt water. And in my time, I tried to explain to folks that if that water doesn't run out, you have saltwater intrusion, and the Delta becomes salt water instead of fresh water. And if you live in Martinez or Benicia, and you're trying to draw your drinking water, it doesn't work out at all. So there's things that we should be doing, and we need to be investing in water reuse programs where you can substitute reused water for potable water, allow that potable water to go to other things. Desalination is certainly something we should look at. You know, the problems associated with that, cost and the environmental impact. And we know that one in Santa Barbara is a prime example how that was built during the last drought, and it was about ready to come online when it started raining again. And when that happens, they close it up because it's expensive to run. There are places we can do desalination that work real well, cleaning up brackish groundwater and things of that nature.
We were just in the valley, in the middle of the hottest day of the year. There's just water everywhere. It doesn't seem to be any efficient way to irrigate this stuff.
Well, and the other problem, you know, back in my Senate days, I put a measure on the ballot that would have excused people, farmers, from being reevaluated for property tax purposes if they invest in water saving devices. With Prop 13, if you make that kind of investment, you get reassessed. Property taxes go up. There's a financial incentive not to do that. And the measure was doing fine. It got on the ballot, and then rained, and we lost by 10 points. But you're right. There's other things that can be done, and this gets a little dicey because people have private property rights, and you have a right to do what's legal. But at some point, we need to figure out how to better manage what we do agriculturally. And the Central Valley is a prime example of that. It used to be that folks down there grew row crops. So if you didn't have the water, you didn't plant your annual crop. But they've changed over, and they're still changing over. They've taken out old farmland and turning it over into tree crops. And you can't stop watering tree crops. These trees will die.
Almost. Lots and lots of homes.
And
Sorry.
yeah, when they shake them, they shake the hell out of them.
I think I'm going to be prompted to ask for questions from the audience. Before I do, we're about to enter another presidential campaign season that seems to be our area. Are you concerned there's not a sufficient number of Republican candidates?
I'm for Donald Trump on the Republican side.
Did you see? I would agree with you. Did you see the polls today that he's ahead? That's a very strange thing.
It's amazing, but I think I'd like to see he and Hillary on the ballot in November.
Is it a good thing that Hillary doesn't have much competition?
Well, she's going to get some competition. She has. I don't know what Jim Webb's going to do, but Martin O'Malley's going to be out there on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
Bernie Sanders is certainly bringing the other side of the spectrum to the forefront. So
there's no argument that you've been to be tested. They're not.
I think she's been tested quite a bit. She can't. they're gonna roll out everything in the world imaginable. Other things that she did, she didn't do, or they made up. So, I mean, it's, you know, remember, I was on the intelligence committee for 8 years. I was there during Benghazi. And our bipartisan staff did the intelligence committee Benghazi report. Bottom line, there's no there. And yet, they're so afraid of Hillary that they put together a Benghazi committee that is funded at a higher level than the intelligence committee funded. Think about that.
You're just around the phrase here, so we won't hold you to this. Who's going to win the Republican nomination?
Donald Trump. You know, it's still very, very early. I've always thought that Scott Walker was a very strong candidate. You know, I guess Jeb Bush is thought to be the mainstream guy. But I think Walker's going to give him a good round.
Questions? Raise your hand, stand up.
Yeah, I'm already standing, thanks. Congressman Thompson, I'd just like to address the Iraq War for just a minute if I can. And somehow many of your colleagues voted for that war, but you were able to resist. How did you resist that, first of all? If you would explain your rationale behind that. Did you get a lot of heat coming back? Because it was a very patriotic thing to vote for that warfare. And then the end result of that war, what's your take on that? So if you could explain a little bit of that for us, I'd appreciate it.
Well, as you may or may not remember, I went to Iraq with 2 of my colleagues prior to the vote. And I felt compelled to find out as much as I possibly could, because I thought that the initial vote on the Iraq War was going to be a hard one, any way you cut it. But I kept thinking about subsequent votes. You know, the first one, you know, that we go to war, but how about the one after that, the one after that, the one after that? Everything from funding levels to troop levels to providing health care to the folks who were injured over there. And I just felt that it would be, any vote for war would be a difficult vote. But if I'm going to vote to send our troops to war, I want to be able to look the parents of all of those troops in the eye and tell them why it's so important to put their kids' life on the line. And I didn't think I was getting the information in Congress. We had these briefings, and the briefings were worthless. They didn't make sense. And I wasn't impressed with them. And, 2 of my colleagues announced that they were going, and I said, I'm going too. And figured out how to make it happen. And I went over there, and when I got there, and after seeing everything I saw, I was completely convinced that that wasn't the thing that we should do. And I didn't see. I was not convinced that they had weapons of mass destruction over there. And as I say, it turns out it was the right choice to make. Did I take some heat? I got thousands of letters that talked about me, talked about my mother. Yeah, they weren't kind. But actually, I probably got hundreds of letters that said that. Cheryl, who's up in the audience there, she probably fielded more than her share of phone calls from folks. But I got just thousands of letters from people thanking me for that vote. And so it was, and I didn't do a poll. I just, the vote was coming up. I got on a plane, I went, I came back, I made my decision, I cast my vote. I didn't know what was going to happen. As you know, they really, politically, they put Congress in a box. If you remember the George Bush quote, he said, I want to see them vote against this and go home on this next break and tell their constituents why. And our district was fantastic. I think there's only one guy who continues to call me Baghdad Mike. But our district was fantastic, and as I say, I think it was the right vote for them.
Congressman, I'd like to publicly thank you for you and government here in California for doing the underground story.
Well, was it part of sequestration, I'm assuming? I don't know the specifics, but, yeah, I think that it's, I think VA, as I said earlier, is already underfunded. We need docs, we need nurses, we need facilities, and it's gonna only get more expensive. I go over to the hospital in Washington and visit with some of our troops, on occasion. And, it's real sad. These guys are coming back, and it's not like the war that I was in. I see soldiers in the hospital in Washington that if I had experienced those injuries, I've been dead. But they have better protection, there's better protective equipment. The health care is immediate. You know, you're not out in the middle of the jungle calling for a helicopter to come get you. It's right there. They have every imaginable benefit of modern health care. And we just save a lot of people. A lot of people who, like I say, task force would be dead. So it's going to be very expensive to take care of them. Walter Jones, my colleague from South Carolina, and called me one day and said, I'm going over to the hospital to see one of my constituents who was wounded. And would you go with me? So I went with him. And this guy, young guy, he'd been shot in the back by a sniper. And he was there. He was there for like his 10th operation. It was just unbelievable. And he had a Ziploc bag, like a 1-gallon freezer bag, full of metal parts that they had taken out of his back. And those, before that, they were there holding his spine together. And I think it was his mother that was there, and she was explaining that the rehabilitation facility in their home state was a 2.5-hour drive from home, and he can't drive. So somebody has to go with him. And then when he comes up to Washington for his surgery, one of them, either the mom or the dad go. And she said, you know, we just take turns. She said, you know, I'm here this week. Next week, I'll go back and go to work. My husband will take a week off of work. And so the cost of this is far more, far greater than you can imagine. It's not just X number of dollars to take care of the injured, but it's the cost to the families, to the parents, and you know, so many marriages are going to be confronted with huge challenges when these young guys come back and they're severely wounded. So there is not enough money to do what we need to do, and we don't need to be reducing the costs. Questions?
So could you talk a little bit about what Congress might be able to do about the biggest threat facing humanity caused by genetic climate change?
I think you're right, by the way. I think the two biggest issues that face us as a people are climate change and the income equity. Those are the two biggest bumps that we have to get over. I have great faith that in September, when the Pope comes and addresses Congress, he's going to talk about climate change, and hopefully my colleagues will listen. But it's unbelievable. I'm not on the science committee, but my colleagues who are call it the unscience committee. And you know, it's not uncommon for some of the brightest scientists in the world to come before that committee and have members of Congress on the dais argue with them. And you know, I don't understand it. And you know, when the debate became so heated back a few years ago, you had this group of scientists that came out against the science, and but that was pretty much disputed. You know, these weren't scientists. If you had a Bachelor of Science degree, you qualified to be on the letterhead. And so I think a lot of it's been cleared, but there is a tremendous amount of money being spent to stop any effort to curtail how a lot of folks in this country are making money. And I think we have to keep that in focus, because things need to change. Things need to change. At some point, it becomes irreversible. And we saw it when we talked about the water down in the valley. You have most conservative part of government, other than Congress, the military and the intelligence community is spending a lot of money and a lot of time trying to figure out climate change. And you can go any place in the world and talk to any military hierarchy, the hierarchy of the military about what they're doing in that region, and they spend an inordinate amount of resources trying to figure out the climate change stuff. Because of the geopolitical impact of this, if you get a 3-foot rise in sea level, you displace populations. And when populations are displaced, where they go isn't necessarily friendly towards that. So you're talking about a shortage in water, a rise in sea level, and you've got global warfare all over the place. And we're part of that by virtue of who we are. It's a real problem. It is the biggest problem we have from a long-term perspective.
Did I see a question over here?
Yeah. I noticed as people were coming in that there may be about 20 of us here that are under 50 years old. I was so disappointed. I was in Washington, D.C. on November 4th last week. And it's like 36% turnout to vote in this country. And I'm trying to figure out what we can do about it. Because that's disastrous. That's the only democracy. You don't vote.
Yeah, I agree. We need to figure out how to involve everybody, and it's a problem. We need to do as much as we can to generate an interest in the public policy that we're working on. We need to bring young people in. We try, I know in my office, to get young people involved as much as we possibly can. Everything from I made a promise when I ran for the state senate that I would visit a school. So I'm going to visit a school a month. And sometimes I miss the month, but other times I make it out for 3 or 4 visits. But I try and do that. I try and go out, I go to the schools themselves, get young people involved. We have programs that we do, a student art project where we get high school kids to compete, to have their art hung in the Capitol. They get to hang it there for a year. The winner, every congressional district gets one. The winner gets a scholarship, an art scholarship, comes to Washington, D.C. They have a big celebration and an reception for them. We do the Veterans History Project, which I think is a real good one, where we get students to interview veterans. Their work goes into the Library of Congress. Different schools handle that in a different way. Some schools have school assemblies around it. One school in Napa this year did a documentary film with 2 students who want to be documentary filmmakers, and they sent that around. So anything we can do, I believe, it's helpful, and we just have to keep doing it.
Dave, how are we on time?
Got about 10 minutes.
Going back to climate change. My name is Frank Winnick. I'm the CEO of a climate research company in Santa Rosa, California. And I couldn't agree with you more about the House Unscience Committee. It's actually pretty scary to me being a scientist. Anyway, we get most of our funding from NASA's Earth Science Division. And I'm not sure if a lot of people here, when they hear NASA, they probably think it's going to the planets or whatever, but NASA is a very vigorous and active earth science. I mean, what's the most important planet to the Earth? And I am hearing that the congressional Republicans and in the Senate also are being very active about gutting NASA's earth science budget. I mean, talking about a 30–40% reduction. That was about 3 or 4 months ago, and I'm wondering if you can fill me in on what's going on there and whether NASA's earth science budget is going to be reduced by that drastic amount, or is something being done to stop that from happening?
Yeah, I don't know the specifics, but I can find out for you the specifics of that particular program. But it's not surprising to hear that they're trying to get that. that's what they're doing. They're trying to unfund anything that has any connection to what you and I would believe would be a scientific or a realistic attempt to deal with this problem. And it's unacceptable, and you can't just stick your head in the sand. But there's a big part of our friends and neighbors who signed those folks. I remember what was the big Tea Party election? Was it 2010? And they were so active. And I had a very active Tea Party opponent, and we had a debate over in Yolo County, the district included Yolo County at the time. And when the issue of climate change came up, I said probably pretty much what I said tonight. And boy, I got booed from a big bunch of these folks. I said, well, hold on. I said, the scientists say that it's real. I'm with the scientists. I'm not with the flat earthers. And but they didn't like that at all. So there's a lot of folks who still think the earth is flat.
Back here?
What do you think the odds of passing the Iran treaty will be with the challenge?
What do I think the what will be?
Iran treaty with Iran.
Well, I think that we've got this 60-day period which to deal with it, for Congress to deal with it. I suspect that it's already over. I leave in the morning to go back to D.C. and we have votes tomorrow evening, and I think probably by Tuesday folks will have made up their mind and know how they're going to vote on this thing. I think that it's going to happen. There's a big effort by the John McCain's and the Lindsey Grahams and some of the others to derail it, but I don't think that happens. It looks like the momentum is on the side of what you're doing, the treaty, and hopefully that will give us the time that we need to discourage Iran from building nuclear weapons.
Hillary Clinton in the vote for the Iraq War, she voted for it. So do you think that will be a big issue in the upcoming discussion, especially with the possibility of us going back into Iraq with ISIS?
No, I don't think it will. I think she did something. Remember, number one, she was a U.S. Senator from New York. That was ground zero. I think everybody in New York voted for the Iraq War. So I think you have to look at it from that starting point. And remember, she came out and said that she had to do everything she would, and she made the wrong vote. And I think that's pretty honest and pretty upfront and pretty courageous. And you've got guys, I know you listen to Pete's candidate, Donald Trump, today. They were asking him, have you ever made any mistakes? Have you ever asked for forgiveness? Over here.
Yeah, I'd like to ask you an education question about President Obama's proposal to make community colleges free, and what you think the chances are, or is it worth people working on it to try to get that, or some kind of federal legislation that will make colleges more affordable?
I think it would be great if community college could be free, or more free than it is now. I don't think anything is ever free, but I think it would be great. I think the chances of it happening are very, very slim. But that community colleges provide such a service to our community and to people. Myself, for example, had it not been for community college, I never would have gotten a 4-year degree. I wouldn't be where I am today. And you can go down the line and the people that it helps. It helps our communities. Those are the institutions of higher education that train folks, educate folks for the demand in their community. And we should just make sure that everybody who wants to go is able to go, and it's as hassle-free as possible. One more over here.
Congressman, thanks so much for your candor. I'm curious what you're optimistic about. in the next 5 years, 10 years? What's good? We talked about a lot of retrospective things, but what's good in the next 5 or 10 years that you're looking forward to?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm optimistic about. And, we've already talked about how it's hard to get things done in Washington. You probably heard me say before, especially when we're working on something as important as gun violence prevention, and I can't get my colleagues to, on the majority side, take my bill up for a vote. And I've said on more than one occasion, it just seems like Congress is a place where good ideas go to die. And you just have to know that, and I think it's been that way for a long time. But what I'm optimistic about is the American people. I come home every week. I'm out in the district. I'm meeting with folks. I'm seeing what folks are doing. I'm witnessing firsthand the entrepreneurial innovation of folks, the hard work, the determination. And America's a good place, and it's a good place because of Americans. And that's what gives me the energy to go back to Washington every week and fight these battles and work really hard to make sure that the people that I represent and everybody else across the country have the opportunity to be able to get ahead, get a good job, raise a family, recreate, live a decent life in retirement. And I think that's worth fighting for.
Thank you for the terrific questions. I just have one more question, and it's probably a very short answer. How many times a year do you fly back and forth between Washington and California?
Probably 40, 45 times.
So people don't appreciate that. That's real work having to fly back and forth 45 times.
That's the worst part of the job. The coming home is the best part of the job, but then the time in the airplane is the worst part of the job.
No private jet?
Pardon me?
No private jet?
No, I fly United. I fly, and nobody has a private jet. The Nancy Pelosi private jet, gold-plated faucets and stuff was, and that was during the Tea Party rally. That was a big criticism. Nancy Pelosi was required to fly on military aircraft. Secret Service put that rule in place. And I tell you, I flew with her a number of times, and it beats United, I can tell you. And especially on those occasions when we landed at Travis Air Force Base. But it was the smallest plane in the fleet capable of making it from Andrews Air Force Base to San Francisco without stopping in the fuel. And I know that the Republicans really whipped it up because they criticized her for having a bigger plane than Denny Hastert. And Hastert had to fly from Andrews to Illinois. And the Secret Service said, no way, you're not stopping for gas. It needs to be one shot. It's against the rules. So no, we fly United. We have a competitive contract, and United wins, and it's probably best because they have more flights between Dulles and San Francisco, and they're pretty good. If we have late votes and we have to reschedule our flight, they will try and get us on. So they have more opportunities for us flying back.
Well, I think you can tell by Mike's answers about veterans and about the Iraq War as just two examples that he's a very straight up guy. So thank you.
I'd like to acknowledge also the volunteer members of the Historical Society of Santa Rosa. They put this on. They're doing a lot. I would encourage you, if you're new to them, to check them out on their website. They're doing a lot of fun, exciting, and worthwhile things, truly, to try to engage the community into this new organization that's celebrating the history of Santa Rosa. So check them out. They're always doing something. I'd like to thank again Freedom and Home Improvement and Lagunitas. Thank you all for coming.